Perfect. So welcome. Thanks for being here for our third of 4 Lunch and Learn series for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We are lucky to be joined by Victoria Grant, our Justice System Racial Equity and Inclusion Manager. So she's going to talk to us a little bit today about our Justice System Advocacy Program. A few housekeeping things. Please insert any questions that you all have into the chat. I will be monitoring the chat as well as Vicky. And then also at the end, we're going to kind of wrap up. I will send an email with information that we talk about later this afternoon so that you have it. And the recording of this webinar should be up on our website, hopefully in the next day or two. So without further ado, Vicky, take it away.
Thank you, Megan, so much. Hello, everyone. I certainly appreciate the time that you have given to learn more about Journey's Center's Justice System Program. And so I want to go ahead and get started. I just want to say, though, that the Justice System Program is one of the oldest programs that Journeys have. And it's a program that really helps our survivors navigate through the court system and do some safety planning. So the mission and vision of Journey Center for Safety and Healing, excuse me, provides services that foster safety and healing to those affected by domestic violence and child abuse, and prevents abuse through education, advocacy, and systemic change. We envision a community where safety and well-being are achieved by empowering people to find a path towards healthy, thriving relationships. So our Justice System Advocacy Program, as I said, JSAP for short.
Vicky, you muted yourself. Do you have it? Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there we go. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, great. Sorry about that. I was moving the slide. So it's one of the oldest programs that we have. So our justice systems, we actually are in 10 courts covering 42 municipalities throughout Cuyahoga County. So all of our advocates work in surrounding suburban courts, municipal courts for individuals involved with a criminal process, advocacy and support in domestic relations court. So those who are looking for a civil protection order, we currently have 2 advocates that will assist in that process. We speak to each victim about their unique situation because all situations are very, very unique. And so what we do is try to give that survivor that autonomy to be able to, and information and options so they can make the best informed decision about the judicial system and if they want to continue with the process. Our Child Advocacy Center, we have 2 advocates and what they do. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with a Child Advocacy Center. So I will just, you can drop it in the chat box and maybe Megan can see, but I would like to explain exactly what that is. So a Child Advocacy Center is based on a national model. We know that when children are sexually abused, that they have to tell that story at least 6 times. They have to tell it, first of all, they have to disclose to the guardian. And then after the guardian, they have to disclose to law enforcement. And after law enforcement, there might be a hospital, a SANE exam for that child. So they have to disclose there and then disclose to a social worker. So the best practice model, national model, is that that child comes to a child advocacy center. They disclose that abuse one time in a forensic interview with law enforcement, prosecutors, social workers, and Department of Children and Family Services, and our advocates observing that forensic interview so that child only has to disclose one time. So that thereby that child is not continuously being traumatized by having to explain that over and over again. And that is recorded. And at any part of the process, the prosecutor has access, our child advocates have access to be able to review that interview. And so that is the national model. So with that being said, we have 2 advocates that actually work in the Child Advocacy Center, and they provide education support regarding the investigative process. That means if there are going to be charges, that they are in contact with the detective, the special victims detective. If it's going to go to prosecution, that advocate is getting all of that information from the players to be able to keep that family informed on how this case is navigating through the justice system. So this is a list of our justice system advocates that we currently have. An advocate role is to support a victim, regardless of their decision, by providing emotional support, information, and resources on their current criminal case, or even their current civil protection order case, and information resources once their criminal case is complete. So these are the list of the courts that we are currently in, and these are the advocates that service those courts. So how does this process work? So normally the process works, the incident occurs, and we have several collaborations with law enforcement and the municipalities that when the incident, the domestic violence incident occurs, they will contact our hotline. They will give that information to our hotline, the information about the case, and then these advocate will reach out to that survivor to inquire if they would inquire basically what would they like to see going forward. And so having that collaboration with law enforcement is a really critical piece of the work that our advocates do, because not only do they get complete a hotline form, but they also have access to the police reports. And so once that information is given, the advocate then reaches and works with that client. I do want to say a little bit about this. So we have cases at the scene, once the law enforcement make an arrest, that the abuser might not have been arrested because they fled and they're no longer at the scene. And so because we don't know that information, we don't know if that abuser has returned home, we don't know if they might be in the honeymoon phase, we will not place a call to that survivor's home because we do not know if that abuser is there. And so normally what usually happens is that when that case comes up within a criminal court, then we will try to wait until that case comes up and then connect with the victim there, because we are always very, very aware of safety planning, and we understand the complexity of being in an abusive relationship. And so therefore, we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can in order to keep that victim safe by not contacting that victim if we're not sure that that abuser is back in the home. I think there's a question in chat, Megan, I'm not sure. So the incident occurs, the law enforcement calls our hotline, we receive the information, we connect with the survivor, we do safety planning, sometimes and then we just ask, what is the need of the survivor at the time that we are able to connect? And so safety planning is of the utmost importance. We know that right after an incident, a domestic violence incident, that's a very dangerous time. And the reason is because things are still kind of volatile. And so what our advocates also do is we do a danger assessment, which is an evidence-based tool that we use to kind of let the survivor know the level of danger that they might be in. And so a high score of 18 is really a score that leans towards that survivor is at risk for lethality. And so we help them to process that score and to really safety plan around that score to make sure that there are options for them in order to keep them themselves and their children safe. We have support groups, but due to COVID, our support groups have gone virtually. And so we are still holding virtual support groups, but I must say that we are getting a lot of response and I think people are really liking the virtual support groups. We certainly had to give some thought about the safety around the virtual support groups. So we had to come up with the criteria to make sure that only that survivor is able to attend the support group. Make sure that you attend the support group in a very secure location. You can't attend the support group from your car or public place. You have to make sure that you are secure and safe when you're on virtually, excuse me, on the support, but not only for your safety, but for the safety as of the other participants as well. Also, we have trauma-informed therapy for our clients. We know that being in an abusive relationship is a very traumatic experience. And so some of our clients actually reach out for those services. So at any point that we connect with a client, we do an assessment to try to make sure that we are hitting all the needs of that client, the safety. Some clients are maybe can't even go back to the home because of fear. So we try to connect our client with the hotline in order to get the client into shelter. If that client feels that they might have been thinking for quite some time that they wanted to get some therapy services. So we do that. So it's kind of like a wraparound services within our agency to make sure that the client is getting their needs addressed. And then it talks a little bit about the civil protection order, which is gathered in domestic relation court. And that process is that anyone can file for a civil protection order. And when they file, there's a lot of, we have 2 advocates that actually work down there and help them, because the paperwork could be really daunting and there's a lot that folks don't understand. And so I'm really grateful that we have 2 advocates down there to work on that process. And also we have our supervised visitation, which sometimes our client uses because the non-custodial parent is the parent that is actually perpetrating the abuse. And so in order for them to still have that connection and have that relationship with that child, they might be ordered to our supervised visitation center where they can safely, in a safe environment, have a visit with that child, because the custodial parent will drop that child off usually maybe 15 minutes prior to the visitation, so that there's no connection between the non-custodial parent and the custodial parent. And so we're always thinking about that safety. That visit is monitored by folks are in the room while that visit is taking place. And so we have that.
Vicki, we do have a question.
Yes.
Heather asks, hi, Vicki. Well, first off, hey, Heather. Is anyone
Hi,
covering ParmaCourt if needed?
I'm sorry, say that again, Megan.
Is anyone covering ParmaCourt if needed?
No, not right now. Currently, due to cuts, we had to cut someone in Parma, but we are certainly looking at that. But we are still taking the hotline calls in Parma, and then we're trying to gather some information, maybe a police report. And there's been incidents where I have asked Barb, like, this is a really volatile situation. It seems really dangerous. Can you reach out to this victim? So having a physical advocate in Parma, unfortunately, we don't right now due to the cuts that we have received, but it is on our radar and we are certainly looking to fulfill that position.
And then, Vicki, I realized we didn't do our poll. So we would love to know, do you have a client or someone who has worked with our advocates before, and specifically our justice system advocates? We just kind of want to see if folks are utilizing this. So go ahead and take that. Okay. All right, we'll give folks another couple seconds to answer. It looks like mostly no, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right, so we'll go ahead and end it. So it looks like actually the majority of folks have not worked with our justice system advocacy program, and it looks like only one person has.
Oh,
So
well, that's interesting.
That's really interesting. So yeah, glad you all are here so that you can learn about this. And so Vicki, go ahead. I have a couple of questions if folks ask them in the chat, but we'll let you finish with the support groups and then I'll ask.
All right, great. Awesome, Megan. Yeah, that's really surprising. And so I'm really, as Megan said, I just want to piggyback, really grateful that you're able to attend this webinar so that you can learn about our services. And so I talked a little bit about the support groups. They are available for individuals that have experienced domestic violence or an abusive relationship. They are facilitated by an advocate, and sometimes we have volunteers that have volunteered with the agency who are co-facilitators. And the groups are confidential, the setting for just discussion of the group. And so it's more basically of a peer group. They're free. There's one on the east side and there's one on the west side. So with COVID, we've been kind of taking a look at, I've been talking to my team because I know that the COVID support groups has been the virtual support groups have been really, really helpful for folks. But I'm also getting the feedback when folks are inquiring through our website about the support groups. I'm getting the feedback that some folks enjoy that one-on-one contact, that peer-to-peer, and actually being in the presence of other survivors. So somewhere down the line, what we're actually going to do is offer both, because I think that is really, really valuable for survivors to have that option. Okay, and I think I froze. I don't know why I'm not moving. Oh, there we go. There we go. So this is the activities. We're always excited about the activities that we are having because you know that October is National Domestic Violence Month. And these are some of the things that we have planned. And Megan, you might want to speak to this information. It's on our website. Folks can obtain it on our website. We have Megan does a fabulous job each year of doing a DVAM toolkit for folks to be able to to have a resource for you to be able to get information and connection, not only with our agency, but just to share with folks that you might come in contact with that are in an abusive relationship. We are always trying to get legislation passed. Right now, Ohio is one of the 2 states with, I think it's North Carolina, that does not have a strangulation bill on the books. Is it South Carolina or North Carolina, Megan?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
I think it's yeah. But so that's part of what we do as well. And I know we want to answer some questions, but I just want to talk a little bit about the systemic change that the Justice System Advocacy Program so that's part of the team's I should say, I don't want to say job description, but we're always looking at systemic change. And we're looking at systemic change through the lens of how is that survivor being treated when they're going through this process? What are best practices? And I know that all of our team members have really good relationships within their court systems. So that if they see a practice that is not really a best practice for a survivor, that they can have those conversations, those deep conversations with prosecutors, with judges, with bailiffs, and saying, hey, this is not really a best practice. This is not evidence-based practice. And I know we're trying to get some prosecutors to actually move to evidence-based prosecution because a lot of times survivors don't want to go. That is because the criminal justice system, we all know, kind of squeaks and runs very, very slowly. And so by the time it gets around to that survivor's case, that survivor has actually kind of moved on. And so they don't want to participate in that judicial process. And so just really getting that information and having task force. I was fortunate enough when I was in Euclid to get actually a Euclid task force, domestic violence task force started with the help of a councilwoman. And we have all the major players at the table. We have the prosecutors, we have the judge, we have the bailiffs, we have the police chief, and we have the mayor. And so having that dialogue and those conversations about what is best practice for victims, I know it might have been done this way for 20 years, but now let's revisit that to see how that might actually be a barrier for victims, survivors not participating in the process. So we do a lot of systems advocacy work, not only within the judicial system, but also with Department of Children and Family Services. We're having two child advocates over at the Child Advocacy Center. There's a lot of system working with that as well. And so I'm going to stop now, Megan. I want to give folks time to address some of the questions that are in the chat box.
Yeah, go ahead if anyone has any questions. But Vicki, I have a question. So
yeah.
You talked about like getting connected via the criminal justice system and process, will you all or do you all work with folks who are not involved with the criminal justice system?
Absolutely. I can only speak for myself. I get so many calls that are not involved in a criminal justice system. I get calls just for people just want to process and not necessarily, and I don't know how to get my number, but I'm so grateful that they do. Sometimes people just want to process. They want to process about their experience. And so to be able to provide them for the resource, because I know where you headed with that question, Megan, is that a lot of times folks don't want to go through the justice system. And because they don't want to go through the justice system, doesn't necessarily mean that they cannot have access to our services. So sometimes it's just a support, it's just providing those resources, it's just being a listening ear, validating their experience and what they're going through. So absolutely, we do, well, I can only speak for myself. That's a question for my team, but yeah, absolutely. I get calls also for, I am what's called the Safe at Home Assistant for Cuyahoga County. And so what that is I help survivors when they want to change their address and have it non-disclosed through the, it's not the Ohio Attorney General's office, Ohio Secretary of State. So I help them fill out that application and to forward that information to the Ohio Secretary of State, and they can keep their address confidential. And then also when they get ready to vote, which is very important, they can keep it, there's a form for them to use when they vote to keep their address confidential. How about I answered your question, Megan?
That's perfect. Thank you. And then I guess one more while we wait for other folks in the chat. How
Yeah.
long will you work with someone? Is there like a time frame where you'll say you've been with us, so you're gonna leave, or?
No. But personally, I mean, even after, so there's a two-edged sword to this, and I really understand it. So once the criminal case has been disposed of, most times folks just want to move on. Survivors just want to move on. And so I let them have that autonomy, but I'm open to work with them as long as they need me, even if the case is disposed of, if they just want to, talk or run something by me. Yeah, so that's really is up to the survivor. But I will say that because of having that traumatic experience and having to go through the judicial system, when that criminal case is disposed of, most of the survivors just really just want to move on with their lives. But I have had survivors like contact me after that case was over, like maybe a year later, and say, hey, this is happening. I'm in a new relationship. I just want to, talk to you and just kind of get your feedback. So yeah, that does happen.
That's so great. Well, thank you. And I think that's one thing that's so great. You listed the advocates in all the different courts. And I think that's one thing that's really important to point out to folks too, is the process is similar, but every court is different. You were talking about
Yeah,
systemic change with our advocates, and that's
yeah,
exactly it. Because if you were working with someone and they're in, Euclid versus Lakewood, it's so important to contact you or Karen
yeah,
versus Janice, because our
yeah,
advocates know each of those systems really well. And that's the
absolutely.
victim, that's the survivor, or that's folks on this webinar who
Yeah,
they're the case manager and they're not sure what it looks like, right? I always joke that I was like when I was an advocate, I was like a broken record of just
right.
continuous repeating the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
and
that
that
is really so important, Megan, for them. Each system, each court, municipality, they work differently.
Yeah. And so we'll give folks another couple minutes, but just because I'm nosy, as Vicki was talking about Domestic Violence Awareness Month, this is our week of action. So today you all are here participating in our week of
Great.
action. So appreciate it. Tomorrow, join us on social media and Instagram. We're going to be talking resources. So more about how to help folks. Thursday, super, super easy. Wear purple. And so I just want to know, again, because I'm nosy, are people planning on wearing purple on Thursday? It's a super easy way to just, when someone says, why are you wearing purple? To say domestic violence awareness, um, and start and facilitate that conversation. Oh, yeah, it looks like most people are saying yes, maybe. Okay,
Great.
that's all right.
Great.
So,
That's perfect.
because I think too, and by being here and by having these conversations, you are helping, right? You are taking steps to help folks have healthy relationships. So
Yeah.
if we don't have any other questions, we can go ahead and in there, we've got about 5 minutes. Like I said, I will be sending an email, a follow-up email with information. We'll include information about our advocates. Vicki, I'll include your contact information. So
Sure.
we're safe at home.
Yes.
I'm so glad you brought that up. But thank you all for being here, and we hope you can
Thank
join us
you.
next week. We're going to have Carrie Joseph with us talking about our prevention and community education efforts. So thanks all. Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
everyone.
Thanks, Vicki.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.